Hello, I'm Heath Dawson, Executive Director with the Living Word Outdoor Drama.
And I'm Logan Hill, the Artistic Director out at the Living Word.
And we want to thank you for joining us this evening. This is our fourth devotional in a series of 14 that we're showing every Wednesday at 5 p.m. during the summer here on Facebook and on YouTube. So we hope you have got something out of our first few lessons. We've spoke about the Beatitudes, John the Baptist, and last week we studied the adulteress. I know Logan and I were talking after our study that we got an awful lot out of it, and he taught me something and vice versa last week. So it was really neat to see how God was working in our study just between the two of us. Again, we hope you're getting something out of these lessons. But each week we start with something that you're grateful for. So at home, name something that you are grateful for. Maybe write it in the comments, or if you're keeping a journal, that's what I would suggest through all these devotionals, is maybe keeping a journal and following along and writing things that you learned from Logan or myself, or that you have learned and
or just God spoke to you that while we were reading and it didn't come to us at that time. And put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments. We'd
love to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So grateful, something you're grateful for in your life. Speak to that. And then challenges. We've talked about some challenges. Logan and I shared ours. As I said, we're doing filming. We're doing probably 5 devotionals here at a time. So we're probably going to do 3 different sessions, but we're still filming session 1, but we're in week 4. Mm-hmm. So, but anyways, we talked about some things that we were going through and challenges, with the world and whatnot. So share some of your challenges. If there's anything that you need prayers for, you can always put it in the comments. We'll put them on a prayer list for you all, and Logan and I definitely will pray, and so will our Living Word family. And then something, accountability. How were you able to take last week's lesson of the adulteress, and were you able to share that with someone? Obviously, it was a very powerful message about Christ not judging and loving the adulteress and having an impact in her life, and it changed her life. So hopefully you were able to share that in somebody's life this week. This week we are going to be studying another favorite, probably of both of us, the blind man at the temple. It's a very interesting story. Jesus does something that's kind of a little bit off the wall in this passage, and we'll get into that as we read. But we're going to go ahead and study from John chapter 9, verses 1 through 7. So not as long as far as verses this week, but still powerful. So Logan's going to go ahead and read, and then I'll reread it from another translation.
And I'm reading from the New Living Translation. John 9, 1 through 7, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the task assigned to us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world. Then he spit on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go, wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and read, as Logan read from the New Living Translation, I'm going to go ahead and read from the New International Version. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. As long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. This means sent. So the man went and washed, and he came home seeing. So let's go ahead and dive into this week's passage and talk a little bit about what's going on in this passage.
So, I mean, they're walking along, and there's just a blind man there, and the disciples are like, hey, he's blind. Is that because of his own sins or his parents' sins? Which what stands out to me with that is the fact that if he was born blind, how would that be his own sins? Because I mean, he wasn't even born yet. But at the same time, you look at it as everyone is born into sin because of the sin of Adam and Eve. And we're told that in Scripture, that we're all sinners because of that. It's passed down through generation and generation. And then he answered by saying it wasn't either of those things. It was so that way the power of God could be seen in him. So he was that and what I wrote down was sometimes the circumstances that we're in is for God's glory. So it's not always something that we did wrong to get judgment upon us. It's for God's glory. And you can look at Job for an example for that. I mean, everything he went through, it wasn't because he had done something wrong. It was because God was using that to have glory there. So
yeah, that's good, great points. All great points. You know, a couple of the things that I look at is, you know, Jesus. You know, when we look at him, you know, when I said that he kind of does something off the wall, you know, nobody, when you're reading, if you'd ever read this for the first time and all of a sudden Jesus is spitting, you know, in the ground, it's not something that you would really expect Jesus to do, is sit and spit in the ground and create a little bit of mud and wipe it on the guy's eyes. I mean, people watching that had to be thinking, what in the world is he doing? But when you think about it, Jesus will use all resources available to restore us.
And I really like, out of the Living Word, the reaction from the blind man when Jesus does that. He's always going, what are you doing? Because he can't see, and all of a sudden Jesus has got his hands on his face, touching him, and he's like, what are you doing?
Right.
And he doesn't know what's going on. And then he just says, go and wash. And by faith, he steps out and goes.
And his sight might have been going, but I guarantee his sound was probably pretty good, and he probably heard the noise that Jesus made in making the mud out of spit. So he probably was, like you say, really wondered what was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I just think it's really neat that Jesus, he always is resourceful. You know, taking spit and mud and restoring somebody's life with the resources that were available to him. And another thing I learned is, you know, that if we listen to Jesus, our lives are always going to be improved. As you said, I mean, if you take this in a different light, what if the blind man wouldn't have went to the pool of Siloam?
Yeah, what if he would have just like, hey, I'm going to go over here and wash in the creek?
Right. And we know what would have happened. His sight wouldn't have been restored.
Right.
And sometimes in our lives, we decide that this path is maybe easier for us. And maybe, like you say, maybe the pool of Siloam was a ways away, and he could have went to another body of water that was maybe just several feet away. Yeah. And sometimes in life, that's the path that we want to take, is the easy route. But God always has, sometimes it might seem like a long path, but it's our patience, you know. Are we going to be patient with what God's doing in our life? And if we do listen to God and to Christ, our lives are going to be improved. And I really think that we can learn a lot from the blind man and his patience and resolve and listening to what Christ told him.
And it doesn't say how long he was sitting there begging, but he was born blind. So he was probably begging all of his life because he had no other way of having a living because he was blind. So. And
if you think, you know, how many times, you know, in your life, if you think about this, you know, maybe a personal struggle or a problem that you had, or maybe even going back to before you and Hannah were married. Maybe you had another girlfriend before that. I know I'd been broken up with before, you know, and you go and tell all your friends, and woe is me, Logan, and you hear that guy, you know, your friend telling the same story over and over and over, and you're just like, man, would they just seriously get over it? And you probably think about this beggar sitting there, blind. Over all those years, he was probably driving everybody nuts. You know what I mean? With his,
how many times did people just walk by? Well, I gave him some money last month, or I gave some money 3 months ago, so I'm good, and just kept walking. I mean, that was his way of living. And he was patiently sitting there, and he didn't know it, but Jesus knew that that was the day that he was going to use him for God's glory. And there's another thing that just came to me by what you just said. Sometimes other people don't have patience with us, but if we have patience with God, we're going to be blessed. So, you know, it is all about patience. I mean, we can think about the Walmart guy.
We here in Cambridge, we have a Walmart, and you drive through there, and Caleb's off camera laughing, chuckling about it because he's seen him. But there's always the same guy with a sign there at Walmart, and have I ever give anybody like that money? Well, of course I have. But you do tend to think that, well, they're there every day. It's the same. It's a spiel or a scheme or whatever. But it's like you take that back to the blind man, and as you said, that guy was there every day. People going right by him, just like the cars at Walmart pass that guy. But Christ was the one who stopped and decided, I'm going to be the one to change this guy's life. So pretty neat to think about that. We've talked a little bit already, dove into Christ, but what can we learn about him even more than what we've said?
I mean, off of what you just said, he is a life changer. So he went into this circumstance here that most people would have been like, man, this guy has no chance. He's blind. He has no skill to be able to help with anything. He just sits there and begs all the time. And he came in and changed his life by just spitting in some mud, spitting in some dirt and making mud and wiping it on his face, and then just said, here's what I need you to do. Just listen to me. Just listen to me and do what I tell you. And he listened and went.
Now, we're not telling you guys to go out and start and trying to make mud and cleanse people. We're not getting to that point. But yes, you're right, Logan, with that. Very good point. What I wrote down is, Jesus is the light of the world. And when you think about this passage, when it's dark, we cannot see. And that's one of my fears. Are you afraid of anything, Logan? Do you have a fear, by the way?
Public speaking.
He plays Jesus in our drama, and I'll attest to this. He's terrified to public speak, but when we go to churches and speak and do things, he does an awesome job. He's come out of his shell a lot. And same with George Clark. He was the same way. Another guy that plays Jesus, and John Ornette. I mean, it's funny that God took 3 men to play Jesus, and all 3 of you were similar in that way. So yeah. But for me, I'm terrified of the dark. I cannot stand the dark. I would not excel on the show Naked and Afraid because I would be afraid as soon as it turned dark. But when it's dark, we can't see. But with Jesus, our lives are always filled with light. And just like this blind man, he was there. It was dark his whole life. Dark. I mean, sure, he could see a little bit of probably a trickle of light coming in, but he never had seen the full light as he was born with blindness from birth. And once we have that light come into our lives, that's when we understand our purpose. And I'm pretty sure that this blind man had a whole different purpose. I mean, go back to the adulteress last week. Anytime Jesus ever touched anybody's life, their life had a totally different purpose. And I guarantee that this blind man's, once he was filled with the light, i.e. Jesus Christ, he had a different purpose. So what can we learn about people from this passage?
I mean, looking at the disciples there, they were asking, well, whose sin was it? Whose fault was it? They were trying to figure out, why was he like this? So why in the world did this happen? We can be, and just like with the adulteress, we can be judgmental at times. And they were judgmental of him and saying that, well, there had to be some kind of sin because he's blind. So there was some kind of sin, he's getting punished for it. What was it? And Jesus is like, no, this wasn't because of any sin here in his life or his parents' life. It was so that way God could be glorified through this. So we can be judgmental even though God is using circumstances to bring glory. So
yeah, good statement. And I kind of wrote down the disciples, they just don't have the knowledge that Christ does.
Yeah.
They were kind of clueless, and most of us are until we finally get that aha moment in our life where Christ unveils what is kind of going on, and God is showing us, God is working, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, okay, now I get it. But we're usually don't have the knowledge until it's revealed to us. And I think the disciples were kind of in that boat during this whole time. And then another key thing about people that I learned is that people are sometimes, and I hate to play on words, but I'm going to do it, sometimes people are blind to God's power.
Yeah.
We don't truly know what he can do. And if you would go back into verse 3, where they're saying that, neither this man nor his parents sinned, Jesus is saying, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life.
And mine says the power of God could be seen in him.
Right, and it's right back to what you were saying. I mean, sometimes we just don't understand. We have a blind eye to God's power, but if we would open our eyes, we could see Him working in our lives. So, well, we hope that this week you got something out of the blind man. For me, this week, I'm going to try to open my eyes to other people's conditions this week. That's what I'm going to look at and see what is their condition, how can I help them.
I think that's a good I will statement. I will open my eyes to, I use the word circumstances here. So, I mean, not only their physical conditions, but the circumstances that they're in, and how God may be using that, maybe using me or someone around me, another Christian around me, or even somebody who's not a Christian, using those to bring glory. So just
great, I will. Logan, you want to go ahead and send us out with a prayer tonight?
Yep.
Okay.
Dear Lord, thank you for the day that you've given us. Thank you for the time that we have this evening to spend together in your word. And we just ask that you would bless each and every one of us through the reading of your word, and just through the lessons that you teach us, allow us to apply them to our lives so that we can go out and spread the gospel in your Son's name. We ask all of this in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And for those of you that want to come see the blind man performed at the Living Word Outdoor Drama here in Cambridge, Ohio. I need some help with my talk there. But here in Cambridge, Ohio, we're located at 6010 College Hill Road. This summer we are closed, unfortunately, but we're excited as we're giving you an awesome virtual online season. Next year we're planning on 2021, and a couple of our guys, I know that Tom Cummings, Marvin Muth, and Joe Seibert are some of the guys that play the blind man, so we're really excited that they're a part of that. But come out and see us next summer and see the blind man perform. We hope you got something out of tonight's devotional. We love you, and God bless.
God bless.